Welcome back. Let's get a check on the soft commodity markets now. See, cocoa prices hit a fresh record high. The March London cocoa LCCC2 futures traded on the ICE exchange set a record high, about 3,205 pounds a ton earlier, and closed up 1.1% at 3,173 pounds for the December New York cocoa CC1, which rose about 0.2% to $3,648 a ton. Well, joining me now is Ted George, Chief Narrative Officer at Cleo's Advisory, joining me from UK. Great to see you again. It's been a while.
It is. It's good to be ready.
So we see prices now at all-time highs. What's driving this incredible price surge?
Yeah, well, it is extraordinary. I think arguably that prices are the highest they've ever been on record. If we go back to the 1920s when they first started trading cocoa internationally, they might be a little bit lower if you factor in inflation. Maybe they were a bit higher in the 20s or the 70s, but really they're at eye-wateringly high prices. And the thing is, it's a bit of an even balance here between worries about production of cocoa, but also strong demand. On the production side, we had a very poor season, which just finished for Ghana. They came in well below what was expected. We've seen a relatively slow start to this current season, which begins in October. And of course, we have El Nino hanging over the whole season. Is that going to affect output? So worries about the crop, that's pushed up prices. But on the other side as well, demand seems to be holding up. We're still seeing grinding is only slightly coming down across the world, which means that buyers continue to buy cocoa at this high price and consumers continue to buy more expensive chocolate. So all in all, it's a bit of a perfect storm, but this does often happen right at the beginning of a season. If some farmers have been holding back beans because they know prices are going to go up, we could see a surge in deliveries. So it's too early to say that we're into a disastrous season yet. We need to wait until we get into November to see the pace of deliveries.
Right, still a wait and see moment there. But what is the outlook for the cocoa season? It just started in West Africa, and will Ghana and Nigeria shake off, problems from last season?
Well, certainly that's where the concern is, because Côte d'Ivoire had a strong season last year. It's likely that it's had a good start to this season. Still a bit early to say. But of course, Ghana's crop was way down. They expected 850. They got about 650,000 tons. That's one of the weakest crops in almost a decade. And so there's a hope that Ghana will bounce back. But there is a financial crisis going on there, particularly for the cocoa companies. And that means not having enough money to buy the cocoa, but also for things like inputs, whether it's fertilizers or spraying against disease. Nigeria also had big problems with rains as well and flooding, which affected the crop. So I think that the real concern is with Ghana that if they can't get the crop back up, we're still going to have a shortage of beans. So I think there's a lot of uncertainty hanging over this season. That's why prices continue to be so high.
Right here in Nigeria, we need more dollar inflow, so we need to sell more cocoa at this great prices right now. But sustainability is becoming a major issue, in cocoa production. What impacts could the COP28 climate discussions have on the sector?
Well, absolutely. I think this is a really big moment coming up. COP28 is really, their meeting at the end of this month is really to say, hey, we have missed a whole series of goals and deadlines. What are we going to do? It's about remedial action. So when it comes to soft commodities, the focus isn't so much there on climate. It's about deforestation, stopping deforestation, and this commitment of 30 by 30. In other words, protecting 30% of the wilderness by 2030. And cocoa is one of the worst crops when it comes to deforestation. You particularly see it in the Ivory Coast, but all across West Africa. There's also going to be a real focus as well on this idea of land use for food. And maybe there'll be questions, difficult questions. Should it be cocoa grown there, or should it be food for the population so they don't have to import it at such a high price? And I also think this overall question of carbon footprint will come on. The European Union has introduced a carbon border adjustment mechanism, essentially a carbon tax, and they're talking about introducing it for chocolate. If so, that would mean cocoa. That could really affect the economic model. So I think there's a lot at stake in COP28, and I think all cocoa producers are going to be watching to see what kind of commitments or regulations come out of it.
Yeah, definitely be tracking that. Another concern, though, is a new EU regulation, banning imports linked to deforestation, forced labor. How serious could this be for African exporters of cocoa to Europe?
Well, exactly. I think this is another concern as well, which is sort of lies alongside to everything happening at COP28. This EU law, I mean, it's in the phase of being implemented. It's still not entirely clear how it will be applied, but they're saying effectively any commodity which is linked to deforestation or forced labor will be banned. Well, that is effectively the entire commodity supply chain in Africa, minerals, but also all soft commodities. So it raises tricky questions. If we talk about child labor, it's not that we're saying that children can't ever work on farms. I mean, they are the children of the farmer. They're going to work on their farm. The point is how they work. Are they not doing dangerous work? Are they regularly going to school? Are they being properly fed? Do they have healthcare? These are the questions that we need to answer around this question of forced labor. And then on the question of deforestation, so much of it is about monitoring. It's about having good data so you can see if there are areas where deforestation is occurring for cocoa, that you go in and stop it. Everyone understands that if you cultivate cocoa in an area which is unsustainable, you won't have a crop in the future anyway. So I think this is a really significant sense of regulation coming in from the EU, because West Africa exports the majority of its cocoa beans to the EU. So I think how it's going to be implemented, that is going to be where we see if there's a real bite to these regulations for African exporters.
Definitely be watching out for that. And as long as the kids are not forced, they can go to the farms. Thank you so much, Ted George, Chief Narrative Officer, Cleo's Advisory. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Larry.